Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Katie, I'm a mixed media artist, and in today's video I want to talk all about colour. So you can see here I'm just picking my reference, and I'm choosing this from a book that I picked up from a charity shop, which is called Old English Villages. And I'm actually going to be drawing this 3 times. I spend about 10 minutes on each drawing, but I'm changing up the colour in each of the pieces. And that's what today's video is focusing on, and the importance of colour and tone. And if you saw last week's video, that was all about my favourite materials. So that was quite a long video, about 30 minutes, and I'm really proud of that one, and I think there's lots of good information in there. And I go through all of my favourite materials and my favourite colours. And in this first one, I'm using some of those here. So this first picture is in the colours that I would normally reach for. I draw and paint a lot of landscapes, and it's one of my comfort zones, and I really enjoy drawing them. You can see that I'm using Tombow's, a Posca paint pen, and I also come in with some coloured pencils. So I am keeping it quite minimal with the colour palette, but these are definitely some of my favourite shades and ones that I go to all of the time, so I feel quite confident with them. In the other 2 drawings that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to use the same reference but change the colours up completely and use totally different colours. So we'll come on to that in a minute, but for now I'm just going to talk through my process here. So I don't sketch first, but I do put down blocks of colour, and then I work on top usually with the texture from coloured pencils and Neocolors, which you'll also see me use. I'm using a mix of Tombow's in this one, but I also use some Ecoline brush pens for the other 2. I've picked quite soft tones, so this is the darkest colour, this is the darker green Tombow, and I will put down all of the shade references down below in the description box. But I generally use my dark tones from the coloured pencils, so the dark indigo is the darkest one that I'll be using. But I like to refine some of the edges, so where I put down my block colours so loosely at the beginning, this is where I can really start to neaten the whole thing up. I was working quite quickly, as I said, it's about 10 minutes per drawing, so I wasn't trying to be super precise, and there's definitely a lot of things that I could add to this, but I did want to do these quite quickly and just compare the colours. And I thought it would be an interesting video because a lot of the colours that I use in the other ones are really not my thing. And I think you can really see that in my work. I definitely have a set colour palette that I usually go for, and although I do amp up the saturation and really bump that up, I do use quite natural tones. So especially like this green, I think that's one of my favourite shades because it's a really nice yellow green, whereas you'll see the other greens that I use are really vibrant and almost too vivid, so they don't feel as natural, whereas I just feel a lot more comfortable with the more muted tones, even if I do use them with brighter tones, such as this lemon yellow that I'm using just as a little touch on top of the grass, and then with the pink and the lavender sort of blue that I add on top with the Neocolors, just as little pops of colour, whereas in the other ones I'm using the really vibrant and lurid colours as the base. The third one I'm doing is going to be combining those, but this second one is all about the colours that I don't really like, I use them the least, and I'm really out of my comfort zone using these. Some of these were bought in multi-packs, so that's why I have them, but they definitely don't get any use. So these are the Royal Talent Ecoline brush pens, which are really lovely, they're really juicy, and I enjoy using them to fill a lot of colour on the page. But these tones are just not something that I would normally reach for because of my usual subjects of landscapes and things that generally don't get this bright. The other thing I want to share and think that is really important to talk about in this video is the importance of tone. So obviously I haven't matched the tone that I've done in the top one. You can see that the sky is the lightest, and then I've got the darker tone in the bushes. Whereas in this one, I've got the darker tone in the water, and the bushes and the green and then the yellow and the pink are quite similar. I think the pink is probably quite dark as well, but it's just very odd. Like, I think you can tell that it's not natural. Even if I picked a usual reference that would have these colours in, I think you would be able to see that it wasn't real. I think it would be good for like a sci-fi sort of picture and maybe if you were using them with other tones, but it was really odd for me. It definitely felt off, and I think it's not just because of the colours, I think it's because of the tones are wrong. So if I was to do this in the future, I think I would maybe swap out the sky colour for the river there, and it would work a little bit better. But I am using my Neocolors, so I'm trying to use the exact same techniques and methods. A lot of my really bright greens and the purples and like the hot pinks in my Neocolor palette don't get used, so I wanted to try those. And I do like that I'm putting on details, especially with this purple. So a lot of the left side of my Neocolor tin doesn't get used because they are these brighter colours. But I did like this purple and how it went with the green. Obviously they are complementary colours, and I did like using that. So now I'm coming on to the third one. I wanted to try and combine them. I wanted to see if I could use some of the elements from both and mix them together and see how that turned out. I'm using the green here for the base, but then coming back in with the usual neutral for the bridge. And I use this beige Posca all the time. It's a really nice base, but I think that was missing from the middle one, is that having that sort of neutral building, because you're never really going to see a yellow building like that with a pink roof in real life. So I've gone back to the lighter tone for the river, as I mentioned, because I learnt from the middle one that was too dark. And again, going back with the darker hedges, which I think definitely helped to balance the picture a bit better than having it too heavy on the bottom. So I'm also using the colour that I used at the top for the sky. And so the main element here that I've changed is the green, and I find that really interesting because I'm using the same coloured pencils here for the rooftops, but the whole feeling of it is different because of that really vibrant green. And I don't know if it's just because I'm not used to it, because I love my yellow greens and that's what I tend to reach for, but I just feel like it's unnatural having this lurid green. So I did try and layer it with the yellow that I used for the buildings above, and that definitely helped. It definitely added a bit more texture as well, which I liked. And then I'm using the sort of purple blue that I used for all of the water on top as like lines, and then I smudged it a little bit with the 553 Tombow, and I think that was a really nice effect. So there's definitely ways to incorporate the brighter colours in, but it's still very different to what I'm used to. I kept with the light cobalt blue for the sky because I thought that was really nice, and because I really like the purple, I did use that for the trees. And I don't think that looks too odd. Obviously it is quite stylized, and I did add some lines here and there with that as well. And I used the green Neocolors here for the lines on the grass. But it's still very different from the top one, and I just found it a really interesting exercise. I think you can learn a lot about colour when you use them, and I found it really helpful to compare it to one that I would normally draw as well. So I think this is a really good exercise as an artist, and I think it's really nice to test out your knowledge and also learn about the tone, because there's definitely things that I picked up from this really quick exercise that I don't usually think about, because I do feel like my colour choices are quite intuitive. So definitely one that I recommend. I know it was a quick video today, but I hope it was helpful to see this. Here's some close-ups of the final art, and although it's not something that I'm very proud of, it was still a really good experiment, and I hope you enjoyed watching it nonetheless. Wishing you a lovely week, and I will see you next Sunday with a new YouTube video. See you later.